in the quiet hush of desert winds, where golden sands stretch endlessly toward the horizon and the night sky glitters with eternal stars, stand monuments that whisper across the ages, pyramids, the eternal triangles, timeless sentinels that rise from earth toward heaven, as if to connect mortals with the divine. To gaze upon a pyramid is to gaze upon memory itself, for these structures are not merely stone, not merely geometry, but sacred echoes carved into the desert, voices of civilizations long gone, still speaking softly to us today. Imagine yourself walking barefoot across the sands of ancient Egypt, the air still and warm, the horizon shimmering with heat, and then, as the mirage clears, you see the Great Pyramid of Giza rising like a mountain shaped by human hands, its vast base stretching beyond sight, its apex pointing unshaken toward the heavens. The silence around it is profound, a silence filled not with emptiness but with presence, the presence of countless lives who toiled, prayed, dreamed, and believed in eternity. Every block of limestone, every passage carved into shadow, every chamber deep within, is not only an architectural marvel but a story, a whisper, a fragment of the eternal song. Humanity has always sung the song of impermanence and eternity, of life and death, of earth and sky. To stand before a pyramid is to feel both small and infinite at once, to sense that you are a fleeting moment in the desert of time, and yet also part of something vast, something unending. These are not mere tombs. They are stairways to the stars, temples of stone, where kings sought passage to the afterlife, where prayers were not whispered but built into geometry itself, where sacred numbers and cosmic alignments wove heaven into earth. Close your eyes and imagine the workers of gizitons of thousands of hands moving in harmony, pulling ropes, shaping stone, singing chants as the structure rose year by year, decade by decade. Imagine the priests standing in white linen, raising their hands to the sky, invoking Ra, the sun god, Osiris, the lord of the afterlife, believing that each stone set in place was a hymn, a sacred verse carved into eternity. The desert wind carries those voices still, soft yet unbroken, echoing through the corridors of time, and yet, even as the pyramids stand unshaken, they remind us of the truth that nothing is forever, for dynasties fell, empires crumbled, sands shifted, and yet the pyramids endure not, as they once were, gleaming in white limestone, their tips crowned with shining gold but weathered, softened, scarred, still standing as monuments to impermanence that became eternal. They are both ruins and miracles, both fading and immortal. To begin this journey among the forgotten pyramids is to step into a dream older than memory, a dream where stone speaks, where silence sings, where eternity is not a distant horizon but a shape you can see, touch, and feel. And as you drift deeper into this vision, let the pyramids whisper to you, soothingly, gently, reminding you that while life is fleeting, memory is not, that while all things fade, their essence remains, and that every soul, like every stone, is part of a greater pyramid pointing always toward the infinite sky. In the golden heart of the Giza Plateau, where the desert meets the endless sky, rises a structure so vast, so precise, and so enduring that even after more than 4 millennia it defies time itself, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, a riddle in stone that continues to whisper its secrets to those who listen. Imagine walking toward it in the soft glow of dawn, the pyramid emerging from shadows like a mountain carved by gods, its vast base stretching longer than city blocks, its apex once crowned with shining gold, catching the first rays of the sun, like a beacon calling to heaven. To look upon it is to feel both awe and silence, for here is not just architecture, but devotion made eternal, a testament to humanity's will to reach beyond mortality. Built for Pharaoh Khufu, whom the Greeks later called Cheops, this monument was no ordinary tomb but a cosmic engine, a stairway between earth and eternity, its dimensions echoing the very proportions of the heavens, its orientation aligned perfectly with the cardinal points, its shafts pointing toward the stars that guided the souls of kings. And yet, how was it built? That is the mystery that humbles us still. More than 2 million blocks of stone, each weighing tons, placed with such precision that even modern tools struggled to replicate it. Were ramps used, spiraling upward, or was water harnessed to float the stones? Did thousands of skilled workers labor tirelessly in rhythm, guided by mathematics and spirit, or was there a forgotten knowledge, a technique now lost in the sands of time? Imagine the scene, workers chanting as they hauled massive stones, overseers calling out instructions, the air filled with the sound of chisels, hammers, ropes tightening, pulleys creaking. Picture the quarry where blocks were cut, the Nile carrying them by boat to the plateau, the desert vibrating with the energy of creation. Yet, despite the enormity of the task, the pyramid rose not in chaos but in harmony, each block placed as if part of a sacred hymn. And when at last it was complete, gleaming in white limestone, its golden capstone flashing sunlight for miles around, it stood as a vision not of death, but of eternity, a monument that said, "We are fleeting, but our dreams are not." Within its corridors lies further mystery, narrow shafts, pointing not randomly, but with cosmic intent, chambers aligned with Orion's belt, the resting place of a pharaoh whose body has never been found. Was it truly a tomb, or something more, a spiritual machine, a temple of energy, a symbol encoded with knowledge of the stars? Scholars debate, seekers wonder, yet the pyramid remains silent, its stones holding their secrets tightly, speaking only in whispers to those who stand in reverence. Close your eyes and imagine standing within its shadow, the desert wind warm against your skin, the sheer weight of history pressing upon you. You reach out, touch its ancient blocks, and feel a vibration not of sound but of presence, as though the pyramid itself remembers every hand that built it, every prayer uttered within, every star it was aligned to. This is the mystery of the Great Pyramid, not only how it was built, but why, and perhaps that is the greater question. For in its presence you realize that humanity has always sought to transcend time, to leave behind something that endures when flesh fades, to whisper into eternity. And as you rest within this vision, let the Great Pyramid's silence soothe you, reminding you that some mysteries are not meant to be solved but cherished, that some wonders are not puzzles but lullabies, carved in stone, and that in the hush of its presence you too are part of the eternal dream it was built to honor. In the golden embrace of the Giza Plateau, where the desert stretches like an endless sea of sand, and the horizon glows with sunlight eternal, 3 pyramids rise together, forming a sacred constellation upon the earth, and among them stand the pyramids of Kafir and Menkaure, guardians of the Great Pyramid, companions in stone who have watched the centuries drift by like grains of sand in the wind. Imagine approaching the plateau from afar. At first you see the Great Pyramid, immense and commanding, but soon you notice the slightly smaller, yet equally majestic pyramid of Kafir, and beyond it the more modest yet dignified pyramid of Menkaure. Together, they are like a family of monuments, each bearing the soul of a pharaoh, each pointing toward the sky, as if to say that kings do not die, but ascend. Kafir, son of Khufu, built his pyramid not as a shadow of his father's but as his own eternal throne, a monument rising proud with a smooth casing still visible near its summit, a reminder of how all pyramids once shone like white mountains beneath the sun. At its foot lies the Great Sphinx, a guardian carved from the bedrock itself, its lion's body and human face gazing eastward into the rising sun, perhaps modeled upon Kafir himself, standing watch over his eternal resting place. To walk near Kafir's pyramid is to feel the strength of legacy, the continuity of a dynasty that believed not only in the afterlife but in eternity carved into stone. Within, chambers and corridors wind through silence, their purpose both practical and symbolic, guiding the soul of the pharaoh on its sacred journey beyond death. Further south, the Pyramid of Menkaure, though smaller, whispers no less powerfully, for greatness is not measured by size but by presence. Its granite casing at the base still clings stubbornly, dark and noble, against the pale desert, as if to say that humility too can endure. Imagine the ceremonies that once took place here, priests chanting in the court, offerings laid upon altars, incense rising like prayers into the dry sky, the living honoring the dead guiding the living through memory. The 3 pyramids together formed more than tombs, they were symbols of cosmic order, aligned with the stars, their placement mirroring Orion's belt, a celestial blueprint etched upon earth. To stand between them is to stand between time and eternity, to feel the balance of power, legacy, and humility expressed not in words but in stone. Close your eyes and let the scene unfold. The desert winds hum softly like a hymn, the Sphinx watches silently. Shadows stretch across the sands as the sun sets, painting the pyramids in gold and crimson. The Great Pyramid speaks of ambition, Kafir's pyramid speaks of strength, Menkaure's whispers of humility, and together they sing of eternity, a chorus of stone voices rising from the desert. And as you breathe in this vision, let their presence soothe you, reminding you that guardianship is not only of stone but of memory, that legacy is not in size but in endurance, and that just as Kafir and Menkaure stand beside the Great Pyramid, every life, no matter how small or great, is part of the constellation of humanity, shining forever beneath the eternal sky. In the timeless silence of Saqqara, where desert winds sweep across a plateau older than Giza, and the horizon stretches like a golden veil, rises a monument that marked the dawn of pyramid building, the Step Pyramid of Djoser, the very first of its kind, a vision born in the mind of a genius architect, Imhotep, who transformed stone into something more than shelter, more than tomb, more than memory, creating a structure that was not only architecture but sacred poetry written in limestone, long before the smooth-sided pyramids of Khufu Khafre and Menkaure rose on the Giza Plateau. The Step Pyramid stood as a daring innovation, a new language of stone that spoke of eternity in layers. Its 6 great steps, stacked like a celestial staircase leading the pharaoh Djoser from earth to heaven. Imagine the awe of those who first beheld it, an entire city of the dead, stretching for miles, filled with courtyards, temples, shrines, and finally, at its center, this towering structure, unlike anything the world had ever seen, rising higher than any building before it. Imhotep, remembered later as a sage, healer, and even a god, conceived of stone in ways no one had before, taking the traditional mastaba tomb, rectangular and flat, and stretching it skyward, layer upon layer, transforming the horizontal into the vertical, the earthly into the divine. To walk through Saqqara is to walk through beginnings, to see the roots from which the great pyramids of Giza would later grow, and to feel the breath of innovation still alive in the silence of its courtyards. Picture the ceremonies here, priests moving in procession, chants echoing through colonnaded halls, offerings laid upon altars, the air thick with incense, the people of Egypt gazing in wonder at their king's eternal stairway to the gods. Beneath the pyramid lay a vast labyrinth of chambers and tunnels, miles of passageways designed to guard the pharaoh's spirit and treasures, their walls once decorated with blue tiles meant to mimic the reed mats of earthly palaces, a reminder that the king's eternal home was both palace and temple, both tomb and gateway. The desert sun bakes the stone, but within its silence remains the pulse of vision. For here, architecture was not just construction, it was transformation. The moment humanity learned that stone could outlast flesh, that memory could be carved into form, that eternity could be reached by building toward the sky. Close your eyes and imagine the pyramid as it was in its youth, gleaming white, its steps sharp against the azure sky, flanked by courtyards alive with worship, its shadow stretching far across the sands like a sundial measuring eternity itself. Now imagine the same pyramid as it stands today, weathered and worn, its stones cracked and softened by time, yet still it rises, still it whispers, still it tells the story of beginnings. To see it is to understand that greatness is not only in completion but in innovation, not only in perfection but in daring to dream beyond what has been. The Step Pyramid of Djoser is not merely the first pyramid, it is the seed from which all others grew, the first whisper of eternity in stone, the moment when humanity learned to shape dreams into monuments. And as you drift into rest, let its story soothe you, reminding you that every beginning is sacred, that every dream has power to shape the future, and that even the smallest step, when placed upon another, can become a stairway reaching into the sky. In the cool silence, deep within the stone hearts of the pyramids, away from the burning desert sun, lie corridors and chambers carved with such precision and mystery that they feel less like architecture and more like dreams woven into limestone. Secret passageways where shadows linger and whispers of eternity echo. The pyramids we see above the sands are only half their truth. Beneath their immense weight lies a labyrinth, a hidden world of tunnels, shafts, chambers, and voids whose purposes are not fully known, whose secrets continue to puzzle both scholars and seekers. Imagine descending into the Great Pyramid, the light of a torch flickering against smooth walls, the air cool and heavy, the sound of your breath amplified in the stillness, each step leading you deeper into a design that feels both practical and mystical. Narrow shafts stretch upward, aligned not randomly but to the stars, as though guiding the pharaoh's soul toward Orion or the North Star. Celestial highways carved into stone. Chambers open unexpectedly. The king's chamber, with its granite sarcophagus lying empty, its roof constructed from enormous beams of stone placed with impossible precision. The queen's chamber, smaller, its purpose debated. The subterranean chamber, rough and unfinished, deep in the bedrock. Its silence unsettling, as if it belongs more to the earth than to man. Then there are the hidden voids, massive, empty spaces recently discovered by advanced scanning technology, vast cavities never entered in thousands of years, waiting in the darkness like unopened letters from the past. Were they structural supports, or secret sanctuaries, or places meant only for the gods to enter? No one knows. And yet, the pyramids are not alone in their secrets. Beneath the step pyramid of Djoser lies a maze of tunnels stretching for miles, some lined with blue tiles shimmering like water, meant to carry the king through eternity's halls. Other pyramids hide false doors, blind passages, traps meant to deceive tomb robbers, secret shafts leading nowhere, as if the builders understood that mystery itself is protection. To wander these passages in imagination is to drift between worlds, the world of the living and the world of the dead, the earthly and the celestial, the known and the unknown. Each hidden chamber feels like a pause in time, a place where silence thickens into presence, where the air itself seems to hum with memory. Close your eyes and picture it. You walk through a narrow corridor, stone pressing close on either side, your torchlight trembling against hieroglyphs. And suddenly, the passage opens into a chamber, vast and silent, its ceiling rising high, its emptiness profound, as if the walls themselves are listening. You kneel, place your hand upon the stone, and feel not coldness but warmth, not emptiness but fullness, as though the pyramid itself is alive, keeping watch, keeping secrets. The hidden passages remind us that truth is rarely on the surface, that the most sacred things are always concealed, waiting for those who journey inward with patience and reverence. They whisper that eternity is not a straight path but a labyrinth, not a single doorway but many, not an open road but a mystery unfolding step by step. And as you drift toward rest, let these hidden chambers cradle your imagination, reminding you that the unseen is often the most sacred, that every life has secret chambers of memory and spirit, and that the journey inward, through silence and shadow, always leads to light. In the golden silence of the Giza Plateau, where 3 pyramids rise like eternal mountains of stone, another guardian rests half lion, half man, carved directly from the bedrock of the desert itself, a figure so vast and timeless that it has become as mysterious as the pyramids it protects, the great Sphinx of Giza, the silent watcher whose gaze has lingered upon the horizon for thousands of years. Imagine approaching the Sphinx at dawn, its colossal body lying low yet powerful. The sun's first light striking its weathered face, shadows falling across its immense paws, stretched forward in eternal stillness. At more than 70 meters long and 20 meters high, it is not merely a statue but a presence, a monument alive with mystery. Its lion's body speaks of strength and dominion, its human face of wisdom and divine kingship, a union of earth and spirit, beast and god, mortal and eternal. Most believe it was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, its face, perhaps his own, gazing forever eastward toward the rising sun, as if to greet Ra, the solar deity, each morning. Yet doubts remain. Was it older, built by a forgotten civilization, before Khafre, its features recarved? Does its weathering speak not only of time, but of floods, long before Egypt's dynasties? The Sphinx whispers questions that history cannot fully answer, and that is, its power. Around its paws lie temples, sunken courts where rituals once took place, where priests chanted hymns to the sun as its rays lit the statue's face, merging stone, sky, and spirit. For the Sphinx was not only guardian of pyramids, it was bridge, linking the mortal world of men with the eternal world of gods. Close your eyes and picture the scene as it once was. Pyramids gleaming white in the distance, golden capstones flashing with fire. The Sphinx, still new, its face painted bright, its headdress bold, incense rising in the air, chants echoing against limestone. Pilgrims came with offerings, kings stood in its shadow to proclaim their power, and all who gazed upon it felt both awe and humility. For here was a being larger than life, carved from the earth yet facing the heavens. Beneath its paws lies the dream stele, left by Pharaoh Thutmose IV, who recorded that as a young man, he fell asleep in the Sphinx's shadow, and dreamed that the great guardian promised him kingship if he would restore its body buried by sand. To dream in the presence of the Sphinx was to touch eternity, to be chosen, to feel destiny whispered through silence. And even now, as its nose is broken, its features worn, its surface scarred by centuries of sand and storm. The Sphinx endures, still watching, still guarding, still holding mysteries it will not yield. It reminds us that guardianship is not about perfection but presence, not about remaining whole but remaining true. To sit before it at dusk, the pyramids glowing behind, the desert cooling with night, is to feel a serenity that words cannot hold. The Sphinx does not speak, yet in its silence it tells us everything, that strength must be tempered by wisdom, that time destroys but also preserves, that mysteries endure because they are meant not to be solved but to be lived. And as you drift deeper into this vision, let the Sphinx's gaze guide you into rest, reminding you that like the pyramids, it guards, life is fleeting yet eternal, fragile yet strong, silent yet filled with whispers that reach across the ages, carrying you gently into the dream of eternity. In the shadow of the mighty pyramids, where the world often imagines only pharaohs and priests, lies a quieter truth, one less told but equally profound, the story of the workers. The thousands of men and women whose hands, sweat, and hearts built the eternal monuments of stone, whose villages still whisper of life lived in the service of eternity. For too long, the myth persisted that slaves built the pyramids, shackled in misery, but the sands have revealed another truth, that these builders were skilled laborers, farmers during the Nile's flood season, artisans, cooks, bakers, brewers, engineers, and masons, united not by chains but by devotion, by pride in serving the divine king who was seen as the bridge between heaven and earth. Archaeologists uncovered their village near Giza streets of mud brick houses, bakeries with ovens still blackened by ancient flames, breweries where jars once foamed with beer, cemeteries where workers were buried with honor, their bones showing the marks of labor but also of care, for they were fed meat and bread, tended when injured, remembered when they passed. Imagine waking in that village at dawn, the smell of baking bread rising in the cool air, voices of families stirring, the call of overseers gathering teams, ropes and sledges ready, chants beginning as workers marched toward the plateau. Picture mothers tending to children, wives weaving cloth, bakers kneading dough for the day's workmen, brewers stirring vats of barley and yeast. Life here was hard, yes, but it was also vibrant, filled with camaraderie, with laughter, with songs sung as stones were hauled, with pride that their hands were shaping eternity. These were not nameless slaves but citizens who saw themselves as part of something sacred, something larger than their own brief lives. Their hieroglyphs, scratched upon stones in hidden places, reveal humor and humanity, graffiti of ships, animals, even jokes. A reminder that history is not only kings but common people who laughed, dreamed, and loved. Close your eyes and walk their streets, hear children chasing each other, smell stews cooking over fire, watch artisans chiseling small statues in the shade. Feel the pulse of a living community where eternity was a shared project. And when they returned from the day's work, weary but proud, they gathered around fires, drank beer, told stories, sang songs, looked up at the rising pyramid and knew they were part of something that would outlast them all. Their graves, found near the pyramids, show signs of careful burial, offerings placed beside them, a mark of respect from their society, proof that their toil was honored. This is the human side of the pyramids, not only pharaohs dreaming of immortality, but people whose names are lost, yet whose labor remains immortalized in every block of stone. To remember them is to honor the truth that greatness is never built by one but by many, that eternity is not carved only by kings but by countless hands working in harmony. And as you drift into rest, let their stories soothe you, reminding you that your labor, too, your daily acts of love and devotion, no matter how small, are part of something greater, part of the endless pyramid of humanity that rises not from stone but from memory, pointing always toward the stars. In the shimmering heat of the desert, when one stands before the towering pyramids of Giza, the mind cannot help but whisper the eternal question: how were these mountains of stone, rising with such impossible precision, built by human hands more than 4,000 years ago? The pyramids are not only monuments but riddles, puzzles of stone that scholars, dreamers, and seekers have pondered for centuries, each theory like a doorway into the mystery of human ingenuity. One vision is of ramps, vast earthen ramps stretching alongside or spiraling around the growing pyramid, upon which sledges dragged stones with ropes. Water poured ahead of them to ease their glide across the sand. Imagine thousands of men chanting in rhythm, the sound of ropes creaking, the scraping of stone against wood, the desert filled with the pulse of effort as block after block was hauled upward, rising slowly into eternity. Another theory imagines an internal ramp, hidden within the pyramid itself, a spiraling corridor through which stones were pulled upward, concealed from sight, the structure itself a machine of ascension. Some see the Nile's waters harnessed, canals dug to float heavy blocks closer to the plateau, barges gliding through man-made inlets, the river itself lending its strength to the dream of eternity. Others envision pulleys and counterweights, ingenious systems of levers, stones balanced against one another, the force of gravity itself turned into a servant of kings. And there are those who whisper of lost knowledge, techniques forgotten by time, secrets of engineering passed down through priesthoods and guilds, hidden in sacred texts, now vanished beneath the sands. Close your eyes and picture each scene, immense ramps rising higher with each layer, dust filling the air as men push and pull, canals flowing with barges, torches glowing at night as workers unload stone after stone, hidden corridors winding within, where teams strain in darkness, chanting as they move the blocks upward, priests watching from below, lifting their hands to the sky, calling upon gods to bless the labor. Yet whichever vision is true, the reality remains the same, that it was not magic but will, not slavery but skill, not alien intervention but human devotion that carved mountains into triangles, pointing to the stars. The workers were not only building tombs but bridges, stairways to eternity, embodiments of cosmic order. The mystery of how the pyramids were built is part of their power, for perhaps it is not meant to be solved completely, but to remind us of the capacity of humanity to dream beyond its means, to do what seems impossible, to carve into earth a monument that still stands when all else crumbles. To stand before a pyramid is to feel that will made stone, that ingenuity carved into desert silence, that determination which made time itself bow. And as you drift deeper into rest, let the mystery of their construction soothe you, reminding you that even the greatest of wonders begins with a single block, a single step, a single dream, and that when many hands and hearts move in harmony, mountains can indeed be lifted, and eternity can indeed be built. In the silent immensity of the desert, where pyramids rise like frozen rays of the sun, their presence is not explained by stone alone, for behind every block and corridor lies a deeper meaning, a spiritual purpose that bound earth to heaven, and mortal breath to eternity. The pyramids were not mere tombs, not monuments of vanity, but stairways to the afterlife. Cosmic machines designed to guide the soul of the pharaoh from the world of flesh into the eternal kingdom of the gods. To the ancient Egyptians, life was not a line that ended in death but a cycle where death was but a doorway into a higher state, and the pharaoh, seen as the son of Ra and the living embodiment of Horus, was destined to rise after death. As Osiris, king of the afterlife, the pyramid was his vessel, his ladder, his stargate. Imagine the pharaoh's funeral procession. Priests robed in white linen, carrying sacred oils, incense rising in fragrant clouds, chants echoing against the desert sky, the body wrapped in fine linen, adorned with gold and amulets, placed gently within the sarcophagus deep inside the pyramid's heart. There, surrounded by sacred texts carved or painted upon walls, spells from the pyramid texts whispered guidance words of power to help the king navigate the dangers of the Duhat, the Egyptian underworld, and ascend to the field of reeds, the eternal paradise where he would reign among the gods. The narrow shafts that pierced the Great Pyramid were not random ventilation. They pointed to stars, to Orion, where Osiris dwelled, and to the circumpolar stars, the undying ones that never set, symbols of eternity. Through these celestial windows, the soul of the pharaoh was believed to fly, leaving his body behind but continuing as eternal light. To stand within such a chamber is to feel this design, to sense that the architecture itself is scripture written in stone, a prayer not in words but in geometry, a hymn sung in angles and alignments. Close your eyes and picture the night sky of ancient Egypt. No city lights, no noise, only desert and stars, millions of them blazing in silence. The pyramids below, gleaming white in moonlight, their capstones of gold catching the faint glow, and from their peaks, the souls of kings imagined rising upward, carried by shafts of starlight, climbing the great stairway that their people had built for them. The people, too, found meaning in this, for by ensuring their king's eternity, they ensured the balance of Met, the cosmic order that held the universe together. The pyramid was not for one man alone but for the whole of Egypt, a promise that the cycle of life and death would remain unbroken, that the gods would continue to bless the land with the Nile's flood, with fertile soil, with sunlight. Each pyramid was both tomb and temple, both grave and cosmos, both monument and machine of transformation. And so, when we gaze upon them today, weathered by time yet unbroken, we are reminded not only of human ambition but of human faith, the belief that there is more beyond this life, that death is not the end but a passage, that eternity is not a dream but a destination. As you drift into rest, let this vision cradle you: the pyramid rising against the desert sky, a stairway of stone reaching toward Orion, the chants of priests carried by wind, the soul of the king ascending like a star, and with it the eternal truth that we, too, are part of this cycle, that we, too, rise beyond death into memory, into eternity, into the endless sky. In the stillness of the desert night, when the pyramids rise like dark silhouettes beneath the endless sky, one cannot help but fall into reflection. For here stand the greatest paradoxes of time, monuments that endure for thousands of years, and yet whisper always of impermanence, of the fragility of all things. The pyramids were meant to be eternal, stairways for kings to ascend into heaven, mountains of stone meant to resist decay, and yet, even they weather, even their smooth white casing has fallen away, even their capstones have vanished into memory. What then is eternity? If even pyramids change, perhaps eternity is not the endurance of stone but the endurance of story, not the survival of monuments but the survival of meaning. The pyramids remind us that impermanence is not failure but transformation. Dynasties rose and fell, sands buried and revealed, winds eroded, time pressed its hand upon limestone, yet still the pyramids remain not as they once were, but as they are now, guardians of memory, teachers of humility, symbols of resilience. To stand before them is to see not only human ambition but human acceptance, the understanding that life is fleeting but that what we create, what we love, what we dream can ripple far beyond our own years. Imagine the pharaohs themselves, believing they had secured their names forever in stone, yet their mummies lost, their treasures stolen, their palaces ruined, and still their pyramids whisper their memory into the present. Perhaps that is enough. Immortality in body but immortality in remembrance. The pyramids, by enduring, teach us that nothing is eternal in form, but everything is eternal in spirit, for as long as someone stands beneath them, as long as someone wonders at their mystery, they live. Close your eyes and imagine yourself there, the desert cool beneath your feet, the wind brushing your face, the stars infinite above, the pyramids before you, weathered yet unbroken. In that moment, you feel both small and infinite, both passing and eternal. You realize that your own life, too, will pass, but that your acts of love, your words, your memories will ripple outward, carried by those who come after, just as the pyramids carry forward the memory of those who built them. Impermanence gives beauty its depth, eternity gives beauty its purpose, and the pyramids stand as bridges between them both. They are not only tombs of kings but mirrors of life itself, reminders that to live is to leave traces, and to die is not to vanish but to become part of something larger. As you drift into rest, let these reflections soothe you, that like the pyramids, you are both impermanent and eternal, fragile and infinite. A fleeting moment in time yet, a timeless ripple in memory. The sands may shift, the stones may fall, but the whisper of your existence, like the whisper of the pyramids, will continue, soft but enduring, forever carried by the winds of eternity. In the vast deserts of Sudan, where the golden sands stretch endlessly beneath a burning sun and the horizon shimmers like a mirage, there rises another land of pyramids, less known than Egypt, yet no less majestic, the kingdom of Kush, where, at Meru and beyond, hundreds of slender pyramids pierce the sky, guardians of a forgotten dynasty, the Black Pharaohs, whose whispers echo still through the silence of Nubia. Imagine walking into this desert. There are no great crowds, no bustling tourists, no towering sphinxes, only quiet dunes and the sudden, striking sight of pyramids, smaller yet more numerous than those of Giza, rising like sharp triangles of shadow and light. Their walls are steep, their tips narrow, their stones weathered, yet proud, their presence solemn yet inviting, as if they have been waiting patiently for centuries to be remembered. These are the pyramids of Meru, built between 800 BCE and 350 CE, long after Egypt's golden age, when the pharaohs of Kush reigned over a kingdom of their own. a civilization that blended African roots with Egyptian influence, a culture powerful enough to rival its northern neighbor, and at times even rule it. To step among them is to step into a forgotten chapter of history, where queens known as Candiques led armies, where kings adorned themselves with crowns of double cobras, where hieroglyphs still marked the walls with prayers to gods both Egyptian and Nubian. Close your eyes and imagine the sound of drums echoing across the desert, the sight of processions winding toward these sacred tombs, incense rising into the air, chants filling the silence, a civilization vibrant and proud, now hushed by the passage of time. Archaeologists who uncovered these pyramids found chambers filled with treasures, jewelry of gold, pottery painted with scenes of daily life, altars carved with symbols of devotion, proof that these were not forgotten people but a flourishing kingdom with its own glory. And yet, for centuries the world overlooked them, focusing only on Egypt's grandeur, while Nubia's pyramids stood quietly in the desert, their sharp forms silhouetted against sunsets, their memory alive only in the whispers of the wind. To wander through them today is to feel solitude and wonder, to walk in silence interrupted only by your footsteps on sand, to place your hand upon stone and sense that, though forgotten by many, they have never ceased to hold meaning. They remind us that greatness is not always remembered, that memory is often selective, yet history itself keeps all records, even if only in silence. The pyramids of Meru are not copies of Egypt, but creations of their own spirit, steeper, smaller, yet multiplied in number, rising like a choir of voices rather than a single monumental song. Together they form a sacred landscape, a cemetery of kings and queens whose stories still wait to be told. As you drift into this vision, let their presence cradle you, reminding you that history is vast and layered, that every culture, no matter how overshadowed, leaves behind whispers of eternity, and that the sands may bury, but they also preserve, carrying forward not only Egypt's greatness but Nubia's as well, so that all voices of the past may one day be heard again. In the warm silence of Nubia's desert, where shifting dunes glow like waves of gold and the horizon shimmers with heat, the pyramids of Meru rise not as copies of Egypt's monuments but as creations of their own unique spirit, slender and steep, their sharp angles cutting into the sky like arrows of stone. Unlike the broad, monumental pyramids of Giza, these Kushite pyramids are tall and narrow, their sides steeply inclined, their summits pointed, creating an impression of verticality, of reaching upward in urgent devotion. They are not built to dominate with sheer scale but to inspire with elegance, with grace, with a sense of intimacy between earth and heaven. Imagine walking among them at dawn, their shadows long and sharp upon the sand, their peaks glowing with the first rays of light, their outlines delicate yet striking, like reeds rising from a riverbank. Their proportions give them a beauty distinct from their Egyptian cousins, while Giza's pyramids feel like mountains shaped by hands. The pyramids of Meru feel like spears of faith, sharp and lean, piercing the sky in unison. Many were built in clusters, side by side, forming cemeteries of royalty where kings, queens, and nobles each had their own resting place, together creating a sacred city of the dead. Close your eyes and picture such a cluster, dozens of pointed pyramids, some small, some tall, their entrances adorned with chapels, carved reliefs on their walls depicting rulers standing before gods, scenes of offerings, processions of devotion, frozen in stone. Some reliefs show queens with elaborate crowns, broad jewelry, and flowing robes, symbols of power in their own right, reminding us that the Candiques of Kush were as mighty as kings, their authority immortalized in these sacred tombs. The steep design of these pyramids also reflects their environment. The Nubian desert, harsher and narrower in resources, demanded efficiency, and so their pyramids were built with precision but on a smaller scale, compact yet radiant, concentrated in their devotion rather than vast in size. Though smaller, they multiplied, and their sheer number creates a landscape unlike any other in the ancient world, a horizon filled with pyramids, dozens upon dozens, their pointed tops like a choir of voices lifting toward the sky. Archaeologists who walk among them describe the sensation of being surrounded by whispers, as if each pyramid is a speaker in a symphony of silence, each adding its note to the eternal hymn of Nubia. And yet, time has not been gentle. Many pyramids were scarred by treasure hunters in the 19th century, their tips broken, their chambers plundered, their secrets disturbed. Still, they rise, resilient, their beauty unbroken, their presence undeniable. their sharp silhouettes reminding us that even when scarred, sacredness endures. To stand among them is to feel the difference between grandeur and grace, between the vast ambition of Egypt and the elegant devotion of Kush, and to realize that both paths lead to eternity. As you drift deeper into this vision, let the slender pyramids of Nubia remind you that greatness is not only in size but in form, not only in power but in elegance, not only in what endures but in how it rises, slender yet eternal, sharp yet gentle, whispering always of lives once lived and faiths once sung beneath the desert sky. In the golden heart of Nubia, where the sands embrace the Nile, and the pyramids of Meru rise in clusters of sharp elegance, the story of Kush is told not only in stone, but in the lives of its rulers, kings and queens, whose power, devotion, and legacy are preserved in these tombs, whispering still across the centuries. Unlike Egypt, where kings often overshadowed queens, in Kush the context the warrior, queens stood as equals, sometimes even greater than kings, their images carved upon pyramid chapels with crowns, weapons, and divine symbols, their voices commanding armies and their presence ruling with strength. Imagine walking into the shadow of such a pyramid, its small chapel still bearing carvings of a queen standing before the gods, one hand raised an offering, the other holding the symbols of her rule, her crown, tall with feathers or cobras, her jewelry broad across her chest, her posture regal and unyielding. These queens were not figures of quiet influence but of visible power, a Menenius who defied Rome itself, leading her people in battle, leaving her mark on history as a ruler of defiance and courage. Her pyramid, though weathered, still carries her spirit, reminding all who stand before it that Kush was a land where women led as sovereigns, where leadership was not bound by gender but by strength of will. The kings, too, found eternity here, buried within slender pyramids that bore inscriptions in Meroitic script, their names now faint, their deeds partially lost, yet their presence enduring in the stones that marked their graves. Some were conquerors, ruling Egypt itself as pharaohs of the 25th dynasty, carrying the black crowns of Upper Egypt and the red crowns of Lower Egypt, blending Kushite identity with Egyptian tradition, their pyramids blending styles yet speaking always of Nubian pride. Imagine their funerals, processions winding through the desert, priests chanting in temples near the pyramids, drums echoing across dunes, the king or queen laid to rest within a chamber adorned with offerings, their bodies wrapped in linens, their spirits guided by prayers and symbols carved into stone. These pyramids were not just tombs but testaments, each one declaring that the rulers of Kush were chosen by gods, their souls destined to join the eternal cycle, their memory written into the very landscape. Close your eyes and walk among them. Here a king who ruled Egypt and Nubia. Here a queen who commanded armies. Here a dynasty whose voices echoed across borders. All together in this sacred necropolis, their pyramids clustered like a family of stars in the night sky. Though smaller than Giza, though overlooked by history, their presence is powerful, their stories profound, their pyramids enduring as symbols of dignity and defiance. To stand among the pyramids of Meru is to feel that you are among rulers not only of a nation but of memory, guardians of a legacy that reminds us that greatness takes many forms, that leadership is not confined to one face or one land, but shared across time, across deserts, across civilizations. And as you drift into rest, let the whispers of these queens and kings soothe you, reminding you that power is not only in conquest but in courage, not only in monuments but in memory, and that the pyramids of Kush, though smaller in stone, are vast in spirit, rising forever in the silence of the Nubian desert, eternal as the stars above them. In the quiet sand surrounding the slender pyramids of Meru, history often remembers only the kings and queens entombed within. But listen closer, and the whispers of daily life emerge: the hum of voices, the rhythm of work, the warmth of families, the texture of ordinary existence woven around monuments meant for eternity. Imagine rising in a village near the necropolis at dawn, the air cool before the sun climbs, the Nile glimmering faintly in the distance, the smell of baking bread drifting through mud-brick streets, roosters crowing, children laughing as they chase one another between houses. Life here was not only about death, but about living, about weaving baskets from reeds, grinding grain on stone slabs, fetching water from wells, shaping clay into jars, tending goats and cattle under the watchful eye of the pyramids. Women stirred pots of millet porridge, their hands skilled in spinning and weaving linen, while men labored in fields, tilled the soil, guided plows drawn by oxen, or joined construction teams at the necropolis, carrying stones, building chapels where offerings would be made. Priests walked among the people, their voices chanting hymns, teaching rituals, reading omens in the stars, for religion was not a distant thing but a rhythm of daily life, woven into meals, births, harvests, marriages, and farewells. Markets bustled with traders carrying goods, ivory, ebony, frankincense, gold, and iron, while travelers from Egypt or further south brought new songs, new stories, new fabrics, dyed in bright hues. Children learned by watching elders, imitating the grinding of grain, the shaping of pottery, the strumming of harps, or the telling of myths around fires as night fell. And always, in the background, the pyramids stood sharpened silhouettes against the desert sky, their presence reminding villagers that life and death were one circle, that today's laughter and toil would one day join the silence of eternity. Festivals brought color and joy, drums beating, dancers swaying in flowing garments, priests offering sacrifices of cattle, beer poured onto the ground in honor of gods, torches lighting the pyramids in fiery glow as night filled with song and devotion. In moments of grief, families carried loved ones to cemeteries near the pyramids, laying them gently into earth with offerings of food, tools, and jewelry, believing that just as their rulers joined the gods, so too would common people find a place in the eternal fields of peace. Close your eyes and picture it all: a mother braiding her daughter's hair in the cool shade, a potter smoothing the edge of a vessel, a fisherman casting his net into the Nile, a child tracing hieroglyphs in sand with a stick, a priest lifting his arms toward the pyramids at sunset as the desert glows red and gold. Life around the Nubian pyramids was not silent but alive, filled with resilience, joy, devotion, and the simple beauty of community. And though centuries have passed, though the villages have crumbled into dust, though only ruins remain, the essence of that life still lingers in the air, in the worn stones, in the shifting sands. To imagine it is to feel connected to them, to sense that daily life, humble yet profound, is as much a part of eternity as the pyramids themselves. And as you drift into rest, let this vision carry you: the pyramids not only as tombs of rulers, but as neighbors of the living, guardians of ordinary joys and sorrows, silent witnesses to laughter, labor, song, and love, reminding us that eternity is built not only by kings but by every life, every breath, every moment cherished under the sun. In the sacred silence of Kush, where pyramids rose slender and steep against the desert sky, life was woven with threads of belief, every action, every ritual, every journey tied to a vision of gods, spirits, and the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. For religion was not separate from daily life, it was its rhythm, its meaning, its breath. The people of Kush inherited much from Egypt, but they shaped it with their own soul, blending Nile traditions with deep African roots, creating a faith uniquely their own. Their rulers, like the pharaohs, were seen as divine mediators, children of gods, protectors of cosmic order. And so the pyramids were not just tombs but sacred portals where kings and queens could step into eternity. Close your eyes and imagine the funerary rites. Priests robed in white linen chanting hymns, drums and sistrums echoing in the air, incense curling upward in fragrant spirals, while the body of the king or queen was prepared, wrapped in linen, adorned with amulets, laid upon altars as prayers invoked Osiris, god of the afterlife, and Apep-Mok, the lion-headed warrior god of Kush. Offerings of food, beer, jewelry, and weapons were placed within chapels and chambers, not as symbols but as necessities, for in the afterlife one continued to eat, to drink, to feast, to fight, to live as on earth but in a more perfect form. The pyramid texts and later the coffin texts were adapted here, but alongside them rose Nubian prayers, carved in Meroitic script still only partly understood, whispers of devotion locked within stone. Picture a burial procession winding through the desert toward the pyramid, mourners chanting laments, children scattering flowers, soldiers marching in solemn honor, priests pouring libations upon the sand. At the base of the pyramid, a small chapel opened, its walls painted with scenes of offerings, the ruler shown standing tall before gods, hands lifted in eternal prayer. The belief was clear that death was not an end but a transition, a crossing into the realm of ancestors, where the soul would be judged, purified, and welcomed into the eternal fields. The gods of Kush were many Amen, whose temples rose at Jebel Barkal, Isis and Osiris, imported but loved, and Apedmok fierce yet protective, carved on temple walls with his lion's head and human body, symbol of strength and guardianship. Festivals honored them, with processions of music, dance, sacrifice, and offerings, the pyramids glowing with torchlight as chants rose into the night sky. In dreams, rulers and priests sought visions from these gods, believing that to dream beneath the shadow of a pyramid was to touch eternity, to receive guidance for the kingdom and reassurance for the soul. And for the common people, faith was lived in daily acts, libations poured at graves, amulets worn for protection, prayers whispered into the wind, songs sung to honor the Nile and the sun. Their cemeteries show this devotion, graves filled, not with grandeur but with care, bowls of grain, clay jars, beads, and tools laid gently beside the dead. Acts of love to ensure that the spirit would not hunger, would not wander, but would find its place among the ancestors. To walk among these tombs today is to feel that belief still lingering in the silence, to sense that each pyramid, each chapel, each offering was a declaration that life endures, that love crosses death, that eternity is not far but near. That religion of Kush was not abstract, it was embodied, alive, vibrant, woven into feasts, battles, births, and burials, carried in the drumbeat of ceremonies and the whispers of prayers carved into stone. And as you drift into rest, let their faith cradle you, reminding you that belief is not only about gods above but ancestors beside, not only about eternity after death but eternity in memory, and that like the pyramids of Kush, every prayer, every offering, every act of love is a stone in the stairway that carries the soul forever upward into the endless sky. In the sacred deserts of Kush, the pyramids did not stand alone. They were cradled by temples, chapels, and ceremonial grounds where rituals echoed beneath the open sky, where faith was not a hidden act, but a living rhythm woven into the land itself. And to imagine them is to hear the sound of drums, the chant of priests, the hush of the people gathered in devotion. Near the pyramids of Meru and Nuri, small temples rose beside the tombs of kings and queens, their entrances marked with pylons, their walls etched with scenes of offerings, their altars blackened by centuries of fire and incense. Here, priests performed the daily rites that nourished the souls of the departed, bringing food and drink, pouring libations of beer and milk, lighting torches at dawn and dusk so that the dead might join the cycle of the sun. Imagine standing in such a chapel at sunrise, the desert chill still clinging to the air, the first rays of light cutting across the horizon, a priest lifting his arms toward the heavens, chanting hymns in a tongue now half forgotten, the smoke of incense curling toward the pyramid's peak as if carrying the prayer itself into the sky. At certain festivals, processions would fill the desert paths, musicians beating drums and clashing sistrons, dancers swaying with rhythmic steps, priests in elaborate headdresses leading sacred statues out of temples to greet the people. The gods of Kushaman, Isis, Osiris, Apedmok were not distant figures but living presences, carried on litters, adored with flowers, fed with offerings, and their blessings invoked for fertility of fields, safety in war, health in families, and guidance in death. The temples near Jebel Barkal, a mountain considered sacred, glowed with devotion, their walls bearing reliefs of kings bowing before Amun, queens raising offerings, warriors standing strong under the lion-headed gaze of Apedmok. The rituals of coronation often tied to these temples, where new rulers stood in shadow of the pyramids to receive crowns, merging earthly power with divine sanction, reminding all that kingship was not human ambition, but divine trust. Close your eyes and hear the sound, a chorus of voices chanting in unison, the low thrum of drums echoing like a heartbeat, the clash of metal against stone, the laughter of children running beside processions, the solemnity of elders standing in reverence, the flicker of torchlight illuminating reliefs at dusk, the pyramids glowing faintly in the firelight. Some rituals were intimate and personal, a mother pouring milk upon the ground in memory of her parents, a family laying bread upon an altar, a soldier whispering a prayer before battle. Others were grand spectacles of devotion, where the whole community gathered in awe as statues of gods were carried from temples, veiled and unveiled in sacred rhythm, as the pyramids stood in solemn witness. Archaeological traces reveal altars, offering tables, libation jars, inscriptions carved in Meroitic scripticos of rituals now lost, yet still present in spirit. Even as centuries passed, as sand-covered chapels and wind-weathered stones. The memory of these rituals lingers, for the pyramids and temples remain bound together, partners in the great cycle of life, death, and eternity. To walk among them today is to feel the vibration of those ceremonies in the silence, to sense that though the voices are gone, their devotion remains etched into the stones, carried by the desert wind. And as you drift into rest, let these visions cradle you, the temples glowing with firelight, priests chanting in the cool night, families bowing in quiet devotion, the pyramids rising eternal in the background, guardians not only of rulers but of rituals, of faith made visible, of prayers made eternal, reminding us that every act of worship, no matter how small, becomes part of the vast tapestry of eternity. In the golden deserts of Kush, where pyramids rise, slender and proud, the story of this kingdom is not written only in stone but in the flowing rhythm of trade, the beating pulse of wealth, and the endless exchange of cultures that pass through its lands. For Kush was not only a realm of kings and temples but a crossroads of the ancient world. The Nile coursed like a silver thread through Nubia, linking it to Egypt in the north and to the deep heart of Africa in the south, making the kingdom a bridge between worlds, a place where caravans of ivory, gold, ebony, incense, and exotic animals flowed northward, and where fine linen, wine, papyrus, and art flowed southward. Imagine standing at a bustling marketplace near Meru, the capital that thrived with iron furnaces, trade stalls, and royal courts. Merchants call out in many tongues, their stalls overflowing with goods gleaming jewelry of hammered gold, baskets of dates and figs, jars of fragrant oils, weapons forged of iron, brightly dyed cloths carried from far lands. Camels kneel in the sand, their saddlebags heavy with treasures, while donkeys bray, pulling carts of grain, and children dart between crowds, their laughter mingling with the voices of traders haggling over prices. Envoys from Egypt stand beside travelers from the Red Sea coast, while merchants from as far as India and the Mediterranean mingle in the crowd, their presence proof of the reach of Kush's networks. The wealth of Kush was legendary not only in gold mined from its deserts and mountains but in iron smelted in its workshops, for Meru became one of the great centers of iron production in the ancient world, its furnaces glowing day and night, the air thick with smoke, the ground littered with black slag, evidence of an industry that armed its soldiers, enriched its economy, and connected it to distant markets. Close your eyes and hear it. The clang of hammers on anvils, the hiss of hot iron plunged into water, the crackle of fires as blacksmiths worked, the hum of a city alive with labor and trade. This wealth flowed into culture, into temples adorned with elaborate reliefs, into palaces filled with fine pottery, into pyramids built not only as tombs but as declarations of prosperity. Cultural exchange shaped Kush's identity. Egyptian gods stood beside African deities. Greek influences appeared in art. Roman coins passed through markets. Indian spices scented the air. To walk through Meru was to see the world gathered in one place, a fusion of languages, styles, and beliefs, each leaving its trace upon the kingdom. And yet, trade was not only material but spiritual. Pilgrims came to holy sites like Jebel Barkal, carrying devotion, sharing myths, blending traditions, leaving behind a tapestry of faith that was as diverse as the goods that passed through. The markets, the pyramids themselves, though Nubian in form, carried echoes of Egypt, symbols of divine kingship that traveled southward along trade routes of culture as much as of goods. This exchange enriched Kush, made it powerful, allowed it to challenge Egypt, to rival Rome, to carve its own place in the story of civilizations. But trade also made it vulnerable, for wealth draws envy, and connections draw conquest. Caravans brought prosperity, but they also brought empires to Kush's borders, each seeking to control its riches, its iron, its gold. Still, the memory of Kush's marketplaces endures, a vision of a kingdom alive with energy, alive with movement, alive with the voices of countless peoples who passed through its gates, leaving behind traces of themselves in language, in art, in faith, in stone. To imagine Meru at its height is to imagine a city glowing not only with firelight but with diversity, not only with wealth but with spirit, a place where pyramids watched over not just rulers but traders, artisans, dreamers, and wanderers from every corner of the known world. And as you drift into rest, let this vision soothe you, the hum of the marketplace fading into silence, the fires of iron furnaces glowing gently in the night, the pyramids, sharp against the stars, reminders that wealth is fleeting, but the exchanges of culture and spirit endure, carried not in gold or goods, but in the memory of those who once met, shared, and dreamed together beneath the eternal desert sky, in the desert silence of Nubia, where once the clang of hammers rang from Meroe's iron furnaces, and the chants of priests echoed through pyramid chapels. Time began to shift, and the great kingdom of Kush slowly faded, not in a single moment, but in centuries of struggle, its decline as mysterious and layered as its rise, leaving behind pyramids that still whisper of both glory and loss. Imagine the capital of Meru at its height, markets alive with goods, rulers strong in their courts, armies proud with iron weapons. Then picture the slow unraveling, trade routes shifting as the Red Sea became the favored artery of commerce, caravans turning elsewhere, the Nile's power waning as foreign hands reached into Africa's heart. Rome, vast and hungry, pushed southward, clashing with Kushite armies, though queens like Amenirians fought fiercely, even blinding statues of Augustus in defiance. The weight of empire pressed hard. Internal divisions, too, weakened the kingdom, as dynasties struggled for power, and the once glowing furnaces of Meru cooled, their smoke no longer rising into the desert sky. Climate may have played its role, the land growing harsher, the fields failing, the river changing course, famine pressing upon the people. By the 4th century CE, Aksum, a rising power from the Ethiopian highlands, dealt the final blow, invading and breaking Kush's strength, scattering its people, ending its rule. Yet even in decline, Kush did not vanish. Its memory lived on, in stone, in the pyramids that still stand, hundreds of them, more than in all of Egypt, sharp against the sands, guardians of a legacy that refused to be erased. To walk among them today is to feel that paradox, a civilization gone, its language half forgotten, its cities silent, its palaces ruined, and yet its monuments enduring, whispering still of kings and queens, of trade and rituals, of life and faith. Close your eyes and picture a traveler, centuries after the fall, wandering through Meroe's ruins, broken walls, toppled columns, pyramids scarred by treasure hunters, yet still rising, still proud, still shimmering in desert light. He hears no marketplace, no drums, no chants, only the wind, but in that wind are echoes, memories that time cannot fully silence. The legacy of Kush is not only its pyramids but its defiance, its queens who led armies, its kings who wore crowns, of Egypt, its people who blended cultures into something uniquely their own. Modern scholars now walk among its ruins, brushing sand from inscriptions, reading fragments of Meroitic script, piecing together the story of a kingdom once vibrant, reminding us that history is not only what is remembered but what is rediscovered. And the pyramids remain their truest legacies, deep and slender, clustered in groups, bearing scars yet still beautiful, reminders that even civilizations which decline leave behind seeds for memory, monuments that speak when voices are gone. To stand among them is to feel humility, to know that no power lasts forever, that all kingdoms rise and fall, and yet to also feel comfort, for even in loss, something endures, something whispers, something continues. The pyramids of Kush are not ruins, they are memories made stone, lessons carved into the desert, eternal reminders that impermanence and eternity are not opposites but partners. As you drift into rest, let their story soothe you. That decline is not only an ending but a transformation. That legacy is not measured by years of rule but by what endures after. And that, like the pyramids of Kush, your own life, though fleeting, leaves behind whispers, traces, memories, carried onward like wind across the sands, eternal in their own way beneath the endless desert sky. In the endless deserts of the Nile Valley, two landscapes of stone rise against the horizon: Egypt in the north, with its monumental giants at Giza, and Nubia in the south, with its slender forests of pyramids at Merowind. Though both share the triangular form that reaches for the heavens, they tell different stories, each shaped by its people, its faith, its time. Egypt's pyramids are vast, colossal mountains of limestone, broad at the base, their sides gently sloping, monuments of ambition that dwarf the human form, built to overwhelm and inspire awe, to proclaim the eternal power of pharaohs who ruled an empire stretching wide. Nubia's pyramids, in contrast, are smaller, steeper, their sides rising sharply, their tips pointed like spears of devotion piercing the sky. Built not in isolation but in clusters, dozens together, creating cemeteries of intimacy rather than single monumental peaks. To walk among Giza's pyramids is to feel the weight of one man's dream-made mountain, each block a statement of centralized power. To walk among Meroe's pyramids is to feel the presence of many rulers, many families, a chorus rather than a solo, each pyramid a note in the song of eternity. Imagine Egypt's plateau, with its grand avenues, its sphinxes, its temples aligned to stars, where each stone was polished to gleam white in the sun, its capstones flashing gold. Then picture Nubia's sands, where pyramids rise from dunes, in sharp silhouettes, their tips broken but their grace still intact. Their chapels small and intimate, carved with images of queens as well as kings. Gods both Egyptian and African sharing the same sacred space. Egypt built in the Old Kingdom, when centralized power was strongest. Nubia built later, in the age of the Kushite dynasty, when influence flowed southward, when Egypt's traditions mingled with local belief, creating something new. The Egyptians favored scale one pyramid rising above all, visible for miles. The Nubians favored number many pyramids together, their presence multiplied, their landscape crowded with voices of rulers. In Egypt, queens are often remembered in temples but buried beside kings. In Nubia, queens themselves were sovereigns kandakes, with pyramids of their own, their images carved proudly on walls, their crowns bearing cobras, their hands holding weapons and scepters. Egypt's pyramids were tombs for eternity, guarded by elaborate mortuary temples, corridors, and shafts aligned to stars. Nubia's pyramids were more modest in interior but no less powerful in meaning, their chapels rich in reliefs, their symbolism rooted not only in Egyptian gods but in the lion-headed Apidmak and other Nubian deities. Close your eyes and picture the difference. Standing at Giza, you feel dwarfed, small before a monument of sheer ambition. Standing at Meru, you feel surrounded, embraced by dozens of pyramids rising around you, each one whispering its own story. Both spoke of eternity, both pointed to the sky, but they did so in voices uniquely their own. Egypt in thunder, Nubia in chorus, Egypt in grandeur, Nubia in grace. And yet, they are connected, for history is never divided by borders but flows, like the Nile itself, carrying ideas, styles, faiths from north to south and back again. The pyramids of Egypt and Nubia are like mirrors, reflecting the same triangular form, but filled with different meanings, each reminding us that there is not one path to eternity, but many, not one way to honor the dead, but countless ways, each shaped by culture, by spirit, by dream. To compare them is not to weigh, but to listen, to hear the voice of Egypt proclaiming, "I am eternal," and the voice of Nubia whispering, "We are eternal," and to know that both are true. And as you drift into rest, let these pyramids, northern and southern, great and small, monumental and intimate, remind you that eternity wears many faces, that legacy is carved in many stones, that memory is sung in many songs, and that whether vast as Giza or clustered as Meru, the pyramids are always the same at heart, stairways of devotion reaching into the endless sky. In the long centuries after the kingdom of Kush had fallen silent, its pyramids buried beneath drifting dunes and its temples cracked by time, the memory of Nubia faded from the world's stage, known only faintly through scattered mentions in foreign chronicles, its grandeur forgotten, while Egypt's fame soared, until, at last, explorers and archaeologists wandered south into the deserts of Sudan and rediscovered the silent cities of stone, bringing the voices of Kush once more into light. Imagine the scene, the 19th century desert, wide and unforgiving, European adventurers on camels, their eyes straining against the sun, suddenly cresting a dune and gasping as the sharp silhouettes of pyramids appeared, not one or two but dozens, rising in clusters against the horizon, their pointed tops glowing in the heat haze. To them it was astonishing, who had built these, why so many, and why were they unknown to the world? Thus began the age of rediscovery, yet not without scars, for early explorers were not always gentle. In 1834, the Italian treasure hunter Giuseppe Ferlini toppled the tips of more than 30 pyramids at Meru, searching for gold, smashing sacred crowns of stone that had endured for centuries, leaving wounds still visible today. He did find treasure jewelry of delicate beauty, bracelets, rings, diadems that he carried away to Europe, scattering them into museums, severing them from their sacred contexts. Yet even in this violence, the world's eyes were drawn southward. realizing that Sudan too had pyramids. Sudan too had a history of kings and queens. Sudan too had a legacy as rich as Egypt's. As archaeology matured, scholars returned not as plunderers but as seekers, carefully excavating chapels, brushing sand from reliefs, cataloging inscriptions, piecing together fragments of the Meroitic script that still resists full translation. Imagine standing with them, the hot sun overhead, a brush in hand, slowly revealing the carved image of a queen with crown and scepter, her eyes gazing out after 2,000 years, her story once more alive. The pyramids yielded pottery, jewelry, amulets, bones of kings and queens, inscriptions invoking gods, fragments of daily life that told of a civilization once vibrant, once powerful. The sands gave back chapels where offerings had been made, altars still blackened, walls still bearing faint traces of paint, and in modern times, technology deepens the rediscovery, satellite imaging revealing buried ruins, ground-penetrating radar uncovering hidden chambers, digital scans mapping pyramids with precision. Each discovery adds to the story, yet also deepens the mystery, for much remains unknown. What the full Meroitic language meant, how exactly these pyramids were built, what rituals filled their chapels each day. Close your eyes and picture today's archaeologists at Marusidanese and international teams working side by side, tents pitched against the wind, cameras recording, notebooks filling with sketches and notes, voices speaking softly in the heat, careful hands lifting artifacts from sand with reverence. Tourists walk among the pyramids too, their footsteps crunching in silence, their cameras clicking, yet many pause, simply gazing, simply listening, feeling that here the past is not gone but alive. Rediscovery is not only about stones but about voices giving back to Sudan the recognition of its ancient glory, telling the world that its deserts hold not emptiness but memory, not silence but songs of kings and queens, prayers and markets, temples and tombs. And as you drift into rest, let this vision cradle you. Pyramids half buried in sand, slowly revealed by gentle hands, forgotten chapels kissed again by sunlight, inscriptions read aloud after centuries of silence, the winds of Sudan carrying whispers of a kingdom reborn in memory, reminding us that nothing is ever truly lost, that time buries but also preserves, that rediscovery is itself a kind of resurrection, and that the pyramids of Nubia, once forgotten, now rise again in the eyes of the world, eternal as the stars above them. In the vast silence of the Nubian desert, where dunes rise and fall like golden waves, and the horizon stretches unbroken beneath a searing sun, the pyramids of Sudan stand as sharp silhouettes, their slender peaks piercing the sky, their shadows shifting with the day, their presence transforming the emptiness of sand into a sacred landscape alive with memory and mystery. To journey there is to enter a realm where time slows, where the desert itself becomes part of the monument, its endless sands cradling the pyramids like a sea that both buries and reveals. Imagine approaching them at dawn, the air cool, the sky painted in shades of rose and gold, the pyramids glowing softly as the first light brushes their steep sides, long shadows stretching across the dunes like dark rivers. The desert is hushed, the only sound, the whisper of wind moving grains of sand, the occasional call of a bird, the soft creak of your own footsteps. As the sun climbs, the atmosphere changes. The heat shimmers, the dunes blaze, the pyramids gleam with intensity, their sharp edges cutting against the brilliant sky. Yet even in the blaze, there is a sense of calm, a deep stillness that envelops the visitor, as if the desert itself is guarding the silence of the kings and queens who rest beneath. At noon, the light is blinding, the pyramids stark and brilliant, their tips reaching into an endless blue dome. And then, as evening falls, the desert transforms again. The sun sinks, painting the sands in crimson and amber, the pyramids glowing like embers, their shadows long and haunting, their forms majestic against the dying light. At night, under a sky unpolluted by cities, the stars blaze in countless numbers, Orion shimmering directly above, the Milky Way stretching like a river of light, and the pyramids become silhouettes of eternity, dark yet luminous, stairways not only for kings but for the imagination itself. Close your eyes and picture yourself sitting at the base of one of these pyramids at dusk, the sand cooling beneath you, the desert wind brushing gently against your face, the silence profound yet filled with whispers, the sound of ancient processions still echoing, the murmur of priests chanting, the laughter of children long gone, all carried faintly in the wind. The atmosphere here is unlike Giza's crowds and noise. It is solitude, intimacy, a sacred stillness that allows you to feel not only the grandeur of the monuments, but the pulse of the land itself. The desert is not empty, it is alive, with shifting dunes, with hidden ruins beneath the sands, with traces of caravans that once passed, with the eternal rhythm of sun and wind. To be here is to feel suspended between worlds, to sense that you are walking not only in space but in time, your footsteps blending with those of ancient mourners, traders, and kings. The pyramids rise like companions, each one a marker of a life, a reign, a dream, their sharp forms reminding you of the fragility of human life and the endurance of human faith. The atmosphere is both humbling and soothing, for in the vastness of the desert you feel small, yet in the presence of the pyramids you feel connected, as if your own breath is part of the same eternity that carved these stones and shaped these dunes. And as you drift into rest, let this desert vision embrace you. Golden sands glowing in morning light, pyramids burning with the fire of sunset, stars blazing above their pointed tips, silence humming with ancient memory, the atmosphere of Nubia, carrying you into a dream where time has no edge, and eternity lies gently upon the horizon like the endless desert sky. In today's Sudan, where rivers flow through bustling cities and life moves to the rhythm of modern times, the slender pyramids of Nubia still rise in the desert, their forms no longer just ancient tombs but symbols of resilience, pride, and cultural identity, linking the living to the forgotten grandeur of their ancestors. For centuries, they stood quietly, overlooked by the world, scarred by treasure hunters. Their names barely mentioned in books that celebrated Egypt's Giza while leaving Nubia in silence. But in recent generations, as Sudan has sought to rediscover its roots, the pyramids of Meru, Nuri, and Gebel Barkal have become emblems of national heritage, reminders that Sudan too is heir to a civilization of kings and queens, warriors and traders, builders and dreamers. Imagine a Sudanese child standing before them today, gazing up at their sharp peaks rising against the sky, listening to a teacher explain that these are not Egypt's monuments, not borrowed legacies, but the creations of their own ancestors, proof that their land once ruled empires, once wrote its own chapters in history. The pyramids speak of pride. They remind Sudan of Amanirenas, the warrior queen who faced Rome, of kings who carried crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt, of artisans who carved chapels with gods both Egyptian and African. They remind the people that their identity is not shaped only by struggle or modern borders, but by thousands of years of greatness buried beneath the sands. Close your eyes and picture the pyramids at Meru today, where visitors, Sudanese and travelers from Afar walk among them, taking photographs, listening to guides, pausing to touch their stones. Some stand in silence, imagining their ancestors. Others sit on dunes watching the sunset, feeling that they are part of something timeless. Scholars and activists speak of them with reverence, urging their preservation, not only as tourist attractions but as sacred heritage, as the living heart of Sudanese identity. Their image now appears in art, in literature, in music, even on currency and stamps, woven into the fabric of national pride. In times of hardship, when Sudan struggles with modern challenges, the pyramids remind its people that they are descended from resilience, from rulers who built against the desert and endured. They stand as proof that Sudan is not a shadow of Egypt but a civilization in its own right, a voice in the chorus of history, a legacy that cannot be erased. And, in the global world, where many still know little of Nubia, the pyramids become ambassadors, drawing attention to a land whose story is older than most nations, whose heritage is as rich as the sands are deep. To stand before them today is not only to honor the dead, but to celebrate the living, to see that identity is shaped not only by what we suffer, but by what we remember, by the monuments we choose to claim as our own. The Nubian pyramids, once forgotten, now rise again as symbols of dignity, teaching that heritage is strength, that memory is power, that identity is a bridge between past and present. And as you drift into rest, let this vision embrace you. The pyramids glowing in moonlight, their sharp forms standing eternal in the desert, no longer silent but speaking to modern hearts, reminding all who see them that we are never cut off from our past, that within the stones of our ancestors lies the strength to endure, and that identity, like the pyramids, is not destroyed by time, but made eternal through memory. In the quiet deserts of Sudan, where the pyramids of Nubia rise in slender clusters against a sky of fire and starlight, The story of these monuments continues not only in the memory of kings and queens long gone, but in the footsteps of tourists who wandered their sands, in the hands of archaeologists who guard their stones, and in the struggles of preservation that seek to protect them against time, neglect, and the world's forgetfulness. Imagine a small group of travelers arriving at Meru today, their jeep crunching across the sand, their eyes widening as the pyramids come into view, not massive like Giza but intimate, clustered, their sharp forms gleaming in the desert sun. They step out, silence falling over them, and walk slowly among the pyramids, cameras in hand, but also reverence in their hearts. For here there are no crowds, no vendors shouting, only wind moving across dunes and the whisper of history. They touch the stone walls, still warm from the sun, trace the faint carvings of queens and gods upon chapels, peer into small chambers where bats now rest, and stand in awe before monuments scarred yet unbroken. The experience is not one of spectacle but of intimacy, a conversation with history, unmediated, raw, alive. Yet tourism is fragile here, far fewer come compared to Egypt, and though this protects the silence, it also means that the pyramids receive less recognition, fewer funds, fewer voices to call for their preservation. Preservation itself is a struggle. The desert is both protector and enemy. Sands bury the pyramids, shielding them, yet also eroding their stones. Winds carve their edges, time wears them down. Human hands have scarred them too. Treasure hunters like Fellini broke their tips. In greed, vandals have left marks, and neglect in centuries past left them crumbling. Today, archaeologists and local communities labor to stabilize them, to document every stone, to rebuild broken chapels, to guard them against both nature and indifference. Imagine them working beneath the scorching sun, scaffolding rising against slender peaks, teams brushing away sand, measuring with care, whispering to one another as they record the silent language of the stones. Each block, each carving, is precious, for once lost, it cannot be replaced. International organizations pledge funds, but challenges remain: conflict, economic hardship, and the world's limited awareness of Sudan's treasures. Yet amid these struggles, there is hope. The pyramids are now recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, their story told in schools, their image appearing on currency, their presence woven into Sudanese pride. Slowly, tourism grows. Travelers seeking something beyond the familiar, something raw, something authentic, come to Meru and Nuri and Gebel Barkal, and they leave with stories not only of ruins, but of resilience. The pyramids remind them that heritage is fragile, that preservation is not only about monuments but about memory, about identity, about ensuring that the whispers of the past continue to reach the ears of the future. Close your eyes and imagine the pyramids at sunset, tourists scattered among them, some sitting quietly on dunes, others taking photographs, archaeologists closing their notebooks for the day, local guides telling stories to small groups, the desert cooling, the pyramids glowing red against the sky. In that moment, past and present merge: tourists, scholars, locals, and kings of old, all bound together in one landscape of eternity. The challenges remain, but so does the determination. For these pyramids are not just stones but symbols, not just ruins but roots, not just the past but the living heart of a culture. And as you drift into rest, let their vision soothe you. Pyramids standing resilient in desert silence, watched by careful hands, visited by curious eyes, guarded by those who love them, reminding us that preservation is itself a form of devotion, that to care for the past is to shape the future, and that even in fragility, eternity endures, sharp and proud beneath the endless Nubian sky. In the wide world beyond Sudan's deserts, where the pyramids of Egypt dominate textbooks, films, and imagination, the Nubian pyramids rise more quietly, their stories often hidden in shadows, yet slowly, steadily, they are emerging into global awareness, carried by scholars, travelers, writers, and artists who seek to broaden the world's vision of antiquity. To remind humanity that the Triangle of Eternity was not only carved at Giza but also at Meru Nuri and Gebel Barkal. For centuries, these pyramids were absent from the global stage, known only faintly to specialists, their image rarely seen, their stories rarely told. Egypt's pyramids became symbols of mystery and wonder, appearing in novels, films, and songs, while Nubia's monuments remained silent. Yet now, in the digital age, the silence is breaking. Tourists post photographs of sharp silhouettes rising from Sudan's golden dunes, filmmakers capture their haunting beauty at sunrise and sunset. Scholars publish books that place Nubia beside Egypt as an equal partner in the history of civilization. Imagine scrolling through images online and stumbling upon Moro's pyramids, clustered tightly in the desert, their peaks glowing red against the twilight sky. You pause, your breath catching, for you realize that history is larger than you. We're taught that greatness is more widespread, that wonder lies beyond the familiar. Documentaries tell of Candaces, warrior queens, whose pyramids stand with pride. Exhibitions in museums display treasures taken from these tombs, their beauty drawing crowds, their labels whispering of a land once overlooked. Writers craft novels that place Nubia at the heart of epic tales. Poets find in the pyramids metaphors of resilience, survival, and hidden grandeur. In Sudan itself, young artists paint the pyramids in murals, musicians sing of them, filmmakers weave them into stories of identity and hope. Slowly, the Nubian pyramids enter global imagination, not as echoes of Egypt, but as voices of their own, telling of a civilization both African and universal. Yet myths and misunderstandings persist. Some still believe these pyramids are Egyptian outliers, or that they were built by foreign hands, forgetting that they are distinctly Kushite, products of a culture proud and independent, shaped by its own gods, its own rulers, its own dreams. Part of the challenge is visibility. Sudan's struggles have kept it distant from the tourist circuits and glossy magazines that so often shape global curiosity. But perhaps this distance is also a gift, for the pyramids of Nubia retain their solitude, their intimacy, their authenticity, unspoiled by overwhelming crowds. Close your eyes and imagine their presence in a global film, a scene where the sun rises over the sands of Meru, a camera sweeping across dozens of slender pyramids, their peaks glowing, their silence profound, their beauty undeniable. Or picture a classroom in a distant country, where a child learns not only of Giza but also of Nubia, tracing both on a map, realizing that Africa's story is vast and layered, that civilizations flourish in many lands. The global imagination is expanding, and the pyramids of Nubia are stepping into its light, becoming not footnotes, but features, not whispers, but songs. They remind us that history is always more diverse than we remember, that every desert hides a story, that every monument has a voice. And as you drift into rest, let this vision soothe you. Pyramids, no longer forgotten, their images traveling the world through screens, books, and films. Their story embraced not only by Sudan but by all humanity, symbols of a shared heritage that stretches across borders, across time, across imagination, eternal in their slender grace beneath the boundless desert sky. In the golden silence of Nubia, where the desert stretches vast and unbroken, where the winds carry whispers older than nations, the pyramids of Sudan stand as eternal guardians, their slender peaks glowing beneath sun and starlight, their presence reminding us that history is not singular, but layered, not narrow but wide, not written only in Egypt's grandeur, but also in Kush's resilience. These monuments, steep and sharp, clustered in numbers greater than all of Egypt's pyramids combined, tell of a people who dreamed of eternity, who built not only tombs but testimonies, who carved their faith and their identity into stone so that even as kingdoms fell and empires rose, their voices would not vanish. To walk among them today is to walk within memory itself, each pyramid a chapter, each chapel a prayer, each relief a fragment of song. They remind us that eternity is not only in vastness but in endurance, not only in size but in spirit. Imagine standing at Meru at dusk, the sand cooling, the pyramids glowing like embers against the crimson sky, silence enfolding you, the stars beginning to ignite above. You feel both small and infinite, humbled by the centuries yet lifted by the realization that the past is never truly gone. These pyramids survived decline, plunder, neglect, storms of time, yet they still rise. They survived being forgotten by the world, yet they still stand. They survived the silence of history books, and now they return to memory, embraced again as symbols of Sudanese pride, African heritage, and human resilience. Close your eyes and listen. You can almost hear the voices of queens and kings, of Candaces who ruled with strength, of priests chanting in chapels, of blacksmiths hammering in Mero's furnaces, of children laughing in villages near the necropolis. Their footsteps are gone, but their echoes remain, bound forever to the stones. The pyramids of Nubia teach us that legacy is not erased by obscurity, That memory waits beneath sand and silence until it is called again. They whisper that identity is not only in the famous but in the overlooked, that eternity belongs to all who dream beyond their years. And they remind us, gently but firmly, that Africa's history is vast, radiant, and eternal, stretching beyond the Nile to deserts where sharp triangles pierce the sky. As you drift into rest, let this vision cradle you. The eternal triangles of Sudan standing proud in solitude, guardians of forgotten dynasties and remembered pride, shimmering beneath stars that watched them rise and still watch them endure. In their presence, time softens, silence deepens, and eternity feels near, reminding you that, like them, though fragile, though scarred, you too leave traces, you too rise toward the infinite. You too are a pyramid of memory and spirit, eternal, beneath the boundless sky. In the high valley of central Mexico, where mountains rise like guardians, and the air carries both chill and sun, there lies a sacred city whose ruins still glow with mystery. Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, a place where pyramids of stone rise immense and eternal, where avenues stretch straight as arrows toward the horizon, where temples, plazas, and murals whisper of a civilization that flourished long before the Aztecs, long before written memory, and whose story remains partly hidden in silence. Imagine approaching it as the sun rises, the Valley of Mexico still shrouded in mist, the peaks of volcanoes glimmering faintly in the distance, the Avenue of the Dead stretching wide before you, paved with stones, lined with temples, leading straight to the towering Pyramid of the Moon. To one side rises the Pyramid of the Sun, vast and solemn, its bulk catching the morning light, its steps ascending toward the sky, as though carrying prayers upward. The city spreads out around you, plazas, apartment compounds, marketplaces, shrines, ruins now, but once alive with tens of thousands of people, artisans painting walls with vivid colors, merchants haggling in markets, priests lifting incense to the gods, rulers commanding processions along this very avenue. Close your eyes and picture it in its glory, the pyramids gleaming with plaster, painted bright red, their staircases alive with processions of dancers, drummers, priests in elaborate feathered headdresses, the air filled with the scent of copal, resin burning, the sound of conch shells blowing, the beat of drums echoing between the mountains. The city was laid out with precision, aligned to the movements of the sun, the stars, the sacred calendar, its geometry both earthly and cosmic. The Aztecs, who arrived centuries later, called it Teotihuacan, the place where gods walked, for they believed it was here that the sun and moon themselves were born, that creation began anew after the world's destructions, that this was no ordinary city but the very axis of the cosmos. Archaeologists still debate who built it, perhaps the Teutonic, perhaps ancestors of the Nahua, perhaps a people whose name is lost but its grandeur is undeniable. To stand at the foot of the Pyramid of the Sun is to feel dwarfed, its base broader than the Great Pyramid of Giza, its steps steep, its summit flat, where once a temple stood, flames of sacrifice rising, prayers whispered, stars observed. To climb it is to ascend through time itself, each step echoing with centuries of devotion, each stone humming with memory. From its summit, the view spreads wide, the Avenue of the Dead stretching straight to the Pyramid of the Moon, plazas unfolding, mountains surrounding, the whole valley alive with sacred geometry. And at night, when stars blaze in countless numbers, one imagines the priests standing upon these summits, observing the heavens, mapping the cycles of Venus, the equinoxes, the solstices, guiding their people with the rhythms of the cosmos. Teotihuacan was not only a city but a statement, a declaration that humans and gods were bound, that architecture could embody myth, that stone could serve as scripture. Its pyramids are not tombs but temples, not dwellings for the dead but stairways for the living to touch the divine. To wander its ruins today is to feel both awe and melancholy. A city, once alive with color and sound, now silent, its paint faded, its stones worn, its people vanished. Yet silence too has power, for in it the imagination awakens, and you can almost hear the drums again, see the feathers flashing in sun, smell the incense curling into sky. The city of the gods remains alive, in its own way, for though its builders are gone, its pyramids endure, eternal witnesses to mystery. And as you drift into rest, let this vision cradle you, the wide Avenue of the Dead stretching into mist, the Pyramid of the Sun glowing beneath dawn's light, the pyramid of the moon rising solemn at the horizon, the whole valley breathing with silence and memory, the city of the gods reminding you that creation is eternal, that every stone can be scripture, and that beneath the endless sky, all cities rise, fall, and whisper forever in the dream of time. In the very heart of Teotihuacan, where the avenue of the dead runs straight and solemn like a cosmic pathway, rises the greatest of its monuments, the Pyramid of the Sun, vast and immovable, its bulk dominating the landscape, its silence filled with power and mystery. For here was a temple not to a man but to the universe itself, a monument that still humbles all who approach. Imagine walking toward it at dawn, the air crisp, the sky painted with pale hues of pink and gold, the immense pyramid looming larger with each step, its steep sides rising in tiered layers, its summit flat yet unreachable, once crowned with a temple now lost to time. The base of this pyramid stretches wider than the Great Pyramid of Giza, though it rises lower, and yet its immensity cannot be measured in height alone but in presence, in the way it fills the valley, in the way it gathers the horizon into itself, making you feel small and vast at the same time. Close your eyes and picture it as it once was, plastered in gleaming white, painted with bright colors, its staircases alive with processions, priests in feathered cloaks, warriors in jaguar skins, dancers moving in rhythm to drums, the air thick with incense smoke, the sun above blazing in perfect harmony with the temple that bore its name. The Pyramid of the Sun is aligned with cosmic precision, oriented not randomly but to the movements of the heavens, perhaps to the setting of the Pleiades, perhaps to the cycles of Venus, perhaps to the solstices, for the builders of Teotihuacan were astronomers as much as architects, binding stone to sky in sacred dialogue. Beneath the pyramid lies further mystery tunnels carved into earth, caves that predate the pyramid itself, chambers shaped like a four-lobed flower, perhaps symbolic of creation, perhaps shrines to the underworld, perhaps the very place where myths said the world was born. To descend into those tunnels is to feel another kind of awe, the air cool, the silence profound, the walls echoing with footsteps, the sense that one is walking into the womb of the earth, into the heart of myth itself. Scholars debate its meaning. Was the pyramid dedicated to the sun, as we know it, or to a deeper, cosmic sun, the source of all light, all creation? Was it a temple of fertility, where rituals ensured the cycles of rain and harvest? Was it a place of initiation, where priests guided souls through darkness into light? No one can say for certain, and in that silence lies its power. Imagine the ceremonies at its summit, fire blazing upon altars, offerings of maize and obsidian, of jade and feathers, prayers chanted in tongues now lost, dancers circling, flutes crying, drums thundering, and perhaps, at times, sacrifices made to feed the gods, the blood of humans offered as sacred nourishment to sustain the sun itself. For the people of Teotihuacan, the cosmos was alive, demanding reciprocity, and the pyramid was the bridge where heaven and earth met, where that exchange was enacted. To climb its steep stairs even today is to feel your breath quicken, your heart race, your body strain, until at the summit you stand above the valley, the city sprawling beneath you, the mountains rising beyond, the sky infinite above. There, silence takes hold, and you feel not only the weight of history, but the pulse of something eternal, something that cannot be named but only felt. The Pyramid of the Sun is not only stone, it is mystery embodied, a question carved into earth, an answer that must be lived, not spoken. And as you drift into rest, let its immensity cradle you, the vast base stretching into the sands, the stairway rising steep into the sky, the summit glowing beneath stars, the tunnels below whispering of creation, the whole pyramid standing, eternal, as a question to the universe, reminding you that mystery is not to be solved but embraced, that power is not in answers, but in presence, and that, like the Pyramid of the Sun, your own life too is both earthly and cosmic, rooted in soil, yet reaching always toward the infinite sky. In the northern heart of Teotihuacan, where the avenue of the dead ends in solemn grandeur beneath the gaze of the mountains, rises the Pyramid of the Moon, a monument smaller in bulk than its great companion, yet no less powerful, for it sits, cradled against the sacred Cerro Gordo mountain, echoing its shape, reflecting the union of earth and sky, stone and spirit, human and divine, a pyramid not of cosmic fire but of sacred waters, fertility, and the eternal goddess. Imagine walking north along the Avenue of the Dead, the Great Pyramid of the Sun behind you, the path lined with plazas and temples, until at last the Pyramid of the Moon rises before you, commanding the horizon, its stairway steep and central, its presence framed by the mountain behind it, as though the pyramid itself were a child of the earth, a crafted echo of the natural world. In Teotihuacan, nothing was built by chance, and the placement of this pyramid was a declaration. Here stood the axis, where female divinity, fertility, and creation converged, where rituals of renewal were enacted, where life itself was celebrated. Close your eyes and imagine the ceremonies that once took place upon its summit. Priests and priestesses ascend its stairs, carrying vessels of water, flowers, offerings of jade and shells, symbols of rivers, lakes, and the womb of the earth. They burn incense, lifting prayers to Chalchiutlik, the goddess of water, rivers, and fertility, or perhaps to a still older goddess, one who encompassed both life and death, creation and destruction, the duality that sustains the cosmos. Drums beat steadily, conch shells sound, dancers move in circles, their feathered costumes shimmering in the sun, their steps echoing the cycles of nature. The people gathered below raised their hands, seeking blessings of rain for their crops, fertility for their families, balance for their lives. And yet, woven into this celebration of life was also the shadow of sacrifice, for the Pyramid of the Moon has yielded burials of warriors, captives, and animals, offerings meant to sanctify the structure, to feed the gods, to keep the cycles of life turning. Archaeologists have uncovered chambers where skeletons lie with weapons and ornaments, where jaguars and eagles were buried alongside humans. Their presence, symbolic of power and divinity, of the merging of human and animal, mortal and divine. Imagine these ceremonies, the solemn silence as offerings were laid, the cries of drums, the moment of release, the blood falling onto sacred stone, believed to nourish the earth, to ensure that rain would fall, that maize would grow, that the city would endure. For the people of Teotihuacan, life and death were not opposites, but partners, each feeding the other, and the Pyramid of the Moon embodied that union. Its alignment, too, was deliberate, built to reflect not only the mountain behind it but also the cycles of the heavens, the setting of the Pleiades, the rhythms of time inscribed in its stones. To ascend its stairs today is to feel the presence of the goddess, the weight of ritual, the heartbeat of a city that lived by balance, by cycles, by reciprocity. From its summit, the view stretches down the Avenue of the Dead, the Pyramid of the Sun gleaming to the side, the city sprawling around, the mountains encircling, the sky infinite above. It is a throne of vision, a seat of perspective, a place where you can feel both the vastness of the cosmos and the intimacy of the earth's embrace. The Pyramid of the Moon teaches that divinity is not only in the heavens but in rivers and rain, in earth and womb, in cycles of growth and decay. It is a reminder that the feminine divine was central, honored, celebrated, feared, and revered. And as you drift into rest, let this vision cradle you, the pyramid rising against Cerro Gordo, like a mirror of the mountain, priests and dancers, circling with flowers and shells, offerings laid in solemn devotion, the city below, alive with prayer, the goddess above smiling with both gentleness and power. The Pyramid of the Moon reminding you that life and death, water and stone, earth and sky are not separate but one eternal cycle, flowing endlessly beneath the boundless heavens. In Teotihuacan, the grand spine of the city stretched wide and straight, a road unlike any other, later called by the Aztecs the Avenue of the Dead, for along its flanks stood temples, palaces, and pyramids that seemed like tombs of giants, though in truth they were not only graves but stages for rituals, processions, and cosmic theater. Imagine walking upon its stones, the avenue stretching more than 2 miles long, lined with platforms, stairways, plazas, each carefully aligned, each echoing a rhythm of geometry that bound the city to the heavens. To walk here in ancient times was not an ordinary stroll but a journey of meaning, for every step echoed myth, every sight reinforced cosmology. Picture a great procession unfolding, priests in brilliant cloaks of quetzal feathers, shimmering green against the sun, warriors, clad as jaguars and eagles, their steps heavy and deliberate, dancers with painted faces and rattles on their ankles, musicians sounding conch shells and flutes, drummers pounding rhythms that vibrated through the air and the bones of the onlookers. The people lined the edges of the avenue, chanting, clapping, offering food and flowers, their eyes lifted toward the great pyramids that framed the procession. At the northern end, the pyramid of the moon rose like a throne, and processions would move toward it, ascending its steps, carrying offerings of maize, water, obsidian, jade, and sometimes blood, gifts meant to nourish gods, to maintain balance in the cosmos. At the center, near the pyramid of the sun, ceremonies of cosmic renewal unfolded, fires lit, incense rising in thick clouds, dancers circling, priests chanting in languages now forgotten. The avenue itself was not only a road, but a sacred axis, connecting mountains with pyramids, earth with sky, human with divine. Archaeologists have uncovered murals depicting these processions, their colors still faintly vivid, lines of priests carrying staffs, gods painted with jaguar spots or eagle wings, processions of serpents, feathered and scaled, their bodies curling across walls, reminding that the avenue was alive with myth made visible. Imagine standing among the crowd, children clutching their mothers' hands, merchants laying out offerings of food, elders chanting prayers, all swept into the rhythm of the procession. The air is heavy with the scent of copal resin, the taste of maize and cacao, the heat of sun upon stone. The avenue of the dead becomes not merely stone but theater, not merely architecture but scripture. Each procession reinforced the city's order, reminding its people of their role in the great cycle of cosmos, to give so that life may be given, to honor so that rain may fall, to sacrifice so that the sun may rise. And yet, beneath the beauty and music, there was always solemnity. For Teotihuacan knew that gods demanded nourishment, that offerings must be made, that life was woven with death. Sacrifices were carried here, to captives taken in war, warriors honored in death, their blood given to sanctify the stones. To the people, this was not cruelty but necessity, for they believed the universe itself was fragile, dependent on the balance of offerings, on the sacred exchange enacted upon this very avenue. Today, the stones of the avenue are silent, the murals faded, the plazas empty, yet to walk it still stirs imagination. You feel the presence of thousands who once thronged here, their voices rising, their drums echoing, their prayers ascending. You feel the alignment of stone and sky, the deliberate geometry that tied this city to the stars. You feel the pulse of a civilization that lived not only with stone and maize, but with myth and cosmos, that built not only a city but a stage where gods and humans danced together. And as you drift into rest, let this vision hold you, the avenue of the dead alive, with feathers and drums, incense rising, pyramids glowing, the crowd chanting, the gods watching, the whole city, a living prayer, a living poem, a living dream, carved in stone, eternal as the stars above. In the Valley of Mexico, where mountains cradle the plain and the air carries both sunlight and shadow, lies Teotihuacan, a city that even in ruins still breathes with mystery, its pyramids rising solemn and eternal, its avenues stretching straight and true, its plazas whispering with echoes of ceremonies long past. A city that lived, flourished, and fell, yet never truly died, for it endures in memory, in stone, in silence, in imagination. To reflect upon Teotihuacan is to reflect upon humanity itself, upon our yearning to touch the divine, upon our drive to carve eternity into stone, upon the way cities rise like stars and fall like embers, yet leave behind light that guides us. Still, imagine the city at its height, tens of thousands moving through its avenues, marketplaces bustling with merchants trading obsidian blades, cacao beans, feathers of brilliant quetzals, artisans painting murals of gods and serpents in colors that glowed beneath the sun, children running along stairways, their laughter mingling with the deep sound of drums, priests carrying incense up steep stairs, their chants lifting toward the sky. The pyramids stood gleaming, painted bright red, symbols of fire and life, their stairways crowded with processions, their summits crowned with temples, smoke rising, voices chanting, offerings laid. It was a city of scale, but also of intimacy, where every courtyard told a story, where every mural was scripture, where every stone aligned with the stars. Yet Teotihuacan also held shadows, for with its brilliance came sacrifice, with its grandeur came demand, with its devotion came blood spilled to sustain gods. Human lives were offered here, captives taken in war, warriors honored in death, believed to nourish sun and earth, believed to keep cycles turning. To us it seems harsh, but to them it was necessity, reciprocity, the price of life itself. In this paradoxity in blood, creation and destruction, devotion and demand lies the heart of Teotihuacan, for it was a city built upon duality, upon balance, upon cycles that bound life and death as partners. Its murals spoke of this truth, feathered serpents curling across walls, their jaws open, their bodies adorned with shells, their eyes fierce, their presence both protective and demanding. The feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, in later ages, symbol of creation and renewal, of wind and wisdom, of cycles endless and eternal. Imagine standing before the temple of the feathered serpent in its prime, its facade covered with serpent heads and shells, its steps alive with color and sound, processions moving, incense rising, prayers offered, sacrifices made, the city's heart beating in rhythm with cosmos. To see it now is to see ruins, stones worn, sculptures broken, yet still the serpents stare, their faces fierce, their message enduring, that the cosmos is alive, that cycles are eternal, that balance must be kept. As centuries passed, Teotihuacan fell, fires scarred its temples, palaces abandoned, people gone, reasons debated. Was it rebellion, drought, invasion? No one knows for certain, and in that silence lies both sorrow and beauty. The Aztecs, arriving centuries later, found the ruins, immense and silent, and named it Teotihuacan, the place where gods were born. For they believed it was here, in this valley, that creation itself was renewed, that the sun and moon rose from sacrifice, that life began again. And in a sense they were right, for though the city's builders were gone, its monuments endured, reborn in imagination, adopted into new myth, carried forward into new time. Today, to walk Teotihuacan is to walk between worlds past and present, silence and sound, ruin and grandeur. Tourists climb the pyramids, their breath quickening on steep steps, their eyes wide at the view from the summit, the valley spreading, the mountains rising, the avenue stretching, the sky infinite. Scholars study its geometry, its alignments, with stars, its murals, its offerings, piecing together fragments of a story that remains partly hidden. Locals sell crafts at the site, children laugh, voices echo, and in the midst of it all, the pyramids endure, solemn, silent, eternal. To reflect upon Teotihuacan is to remember that cities are more than stone, more than markets, more than power. They are dreams, collective dreams carved into earth. Teotihuacan dreamed of eternity, dreamed of balance, dreamed of union between gods and humans, earth and sky, life and death. That dream remains, whispering through its ruins, calling us to remember, to reflect, to reimagine. Close your eyes and picture standing upon the pyramid of the sun. At sunset, the light turns golden, the valley glows, shadows lengthen. The pyramid of the moon rises solemn at the horizon. The avenue of the dead stretches like a river of stone, and the mountains beyond cradle the city in silence. The wind brushes your face, the sky deepens into crimson and violet, and stars begin to flicker above. In that moment, you feel the city alive again, not as ruins but as spirit, not as silence but as song, not as past but as presence. You feel the heartbeat of those who built it, those who prayed here, those who offered here, those who dreamed here. You realize that Teotihuacan was not only a city of gods but a city of humans, humans like us, yearning for eternity, striving for meaning, carving stone and story into one. And as night falls, the pyramids become silhouettes against the Milky Way, stairways, pointing not only upward but inward, toward the cosmos of the soul. Let this vision cradle you as you drift into rest. Teotihuacan, alive in memory. Its pyramids glowing beneath stars, its avenues whispering with processions, its temples humming with prayers, its murals alive with serpents and feathers, its story unfolding eternal. Let it remind you that all cities rise and fall, but dreams endure, that memory is not erased but transformed, that we too carve our stories into time, that eternity is not far but within us, and that, like the pyramids of Teotihuacan, we too are bridges between earth and sky, stone and star, silence and song, eternal beneath the boundless heavens.